Hey everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Sam Shaw and I'm the founder of Wall Street Mastermind. This is Wall Street Mastermind's Elevate program, where we take our flagship coaching program and give it away for free to high potential students who are currently in a difficult financial situation. The goal of this show is to first and foremost give these students the coaching and guidance that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise and help them break into investment banking. Of course, we also want to give all of you an in-depth look at how to go about your own investment banking preparation process the right way, so that you can model it after the same proven methodology and strategies that we've used to place over 90% of our students into investment banking across every single bulge bracket and elite boutique bank over the last several years. With hundreds of thousands of applicants competing to break into investment banking globally each year, our team only has the bandwidth to help a very small percentage of you. So my hope is that this show helps all of you, even if you aren't able to directly participate in our program and work with us. So let's get to it. In this session, we get an update from Ximena about her status on the various processes that she's in, including Morgan Stanley, RBC Capital Markets, Perella Weinberg, Citi, and Bank of America. We also discussed the strategy behind how to answer what other banks are you talking to, since this is a tricky question, and how you answer it really depends on which bank is asking and what other banks you're in processes with. Hey, Ximena.
Hi, Sam.
Hi. How's it going?
It's going good. Another week. Yeah, it's going.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm good, busy, everyone's everyone's deep in recruiting, and this is busiest time of the year for us. So, but I know you messaged me, so you heard back from MS, right?
Yeah.
So you thought the interview went well, right?
Yeah, I did. And I really, really liked the people. I think that was hard. Especially just the early insights, and everyone I talked to and the amount of help that I got. Like I told you, like going into the interview, I had like a managing director email me. I had somebody else from NYU talk to me and help me prep like the night before. So I don't know, that was hard, but we'll see if he can give me some feedback and I can see what happened.
Yeah. So you asked so the MD that helped you, you reached out and asked him for feedback, and you're just waiting now?
Yeah. I don't know if he'll answer, but
yeah, I mean, usually with feedback, like HR is never going to give you feedback, because for them it's just they got to do everything by the books, and their job is to protect the company from a liability standpoint, and so there's no incentive whatsoever to give you guys feedback in case, I don't know, they get a lawsuit about discrimination, or you didn't hire me because of XYZ reasons or whatever, right? So typically for feedback, you're going to have to ask the people that are really in your corner and they were already helping you, or you had a great networking relationship with them, and they just like people that wouldn't mind helping you out, basically. So if this managing director was like, going out of his way to help you and doing mock interviews with you and stuff like that, then I would suspect that he wouldn't mind giving you some feedback. So, so let's see what they say, I guess. But I mean, yeah, it sucks, but I feel like you're so close.
We're almost there.
You've had multiple super days, and they seem to go well, at least from your perspective. I don't know, I wasn't there.
Yeah. I definitely feel like they progress, and something that did help was a couple months ago. So I've basically done as much diversity recruiting as I can, and I tried to get into a Barclays event that they had going, and I had a phone call on that, and then I got a response that I didn't get in. So I did message the girl about it, and what she told me was that my responses for my behaviorals were a bit too short. Like she didn't feel like she had gotten to really know me. And from another event, because I had done a phone call interview for PJT's women's event, and what she had told me was that it had been too much like one-sided. Like she felt like she was the only interviewer, and I wasn't like getting to know her as an interviewer either. So that was kind of the feedback that I got. So I guess I'm not really getting people to know me as a person, which is the point of behaviorals. Because I think mentally I've been going through behaviorals, like just answering things, but not really like making sure like they're getting to know me as a person and the way I'm describing things. I don't know if that makes sense. But that was kind of my takeaway from that.
Yeah, I mean, typically, 9 out of 10 times, if you walk away from the interview feeling like it went well and you don't get the offer, it's usually the behaviorals, right?
Mhm.
So, because if it's
Right.
technicals, then you would have known, oh, I messed up on this technical, or like you would not be feeling good about the interview, right?
Yeah.
With the behaviorals, if they don't like your behavior answer, like typically you're just not going to know, and
Mhm.
you're not going to feel like you said anything wrong, right? So, yeah, I agree. It's most likely on the behavioral side, but that second feedback about being one-sided and you not really getting to know her. I mean, did she like ask you if you had any questions for her at the end, or like?
Well, it was like she was asking me, and I think she was trying to make it conversational. And then I was like, oh, that's great. And then it would be this silence. And then she'd be like, okay, next question. And then it ended very quickly. Like she went really hard on some technicals and she was like, yeah, sorry for going so hard into those, but that was a good answer. And then she was like, okay, I don't like this to be so one-sided. So can you ask me some questions?
She said that
Yeah.
during the interview. I see.
Yeah, that was a phone interview. It was for PJT women's event.
So when you ask her questions, when she asked you to ask her questions, you ask your questions and she give you an answer and you say, oh, okay, that's great. And then there was no like follow-up, basically.
Yeah, like so she would ask me questions and then she would like try to make conversation out of it, like, oh, that's really great. And then I would say, okay, but I wasn't really following up more conversation into it. I was just answering the questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess
Yeah.
that one live and learn, right? But I think that once they ask you to ask them questions, especially if she like turn it over to you. So it sounds like she turned it over to you pretty early on in the interview. It was like still with a lot of time left. And so she kind of she wanted you to be in the driver's seat and kind of drive the conversation. And I guess like at that point, then you kind of have to go back into networking mode.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
when you're on these networking calls and you're asking the questions and then whatever they say, you're asking them follow-up questions to whatever they just said. Like, I guess that's probably what she was looking for, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but that's an easy fix, though.
Right. I that's exactly kind of what I applied to the RBC interview. And I thought that was like the best one that I've had, just because I try to make it as like interactive and good as possible.
Yeah.
And I thought that went pretty well.
When was your RBC interview? That just happened?
That was last week.
Okay.
Last week. Yeah, that was last week, early last week.
That was the first round?
Yep, that was first round, and then Super Day is next Wednesday.
You already got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Super Day is next Wednesday. Okay. And then who else are you waiting to hear back from?
Perella, I'm waiting to hear back from. That was Friday. I didn't ask the interviewer though how long it would take to hear back.
How'd you feel about that one?
I thought it went pretty well. We went back and forth quite a lot. He was just very curious about like trends, like I said, and what I thought. So it was very like, I guess, I don't know if there's a right or wrong from that. I was just kind of going off of like everything I've been reading and podcasts I've been listening. So I hope it was okay. But yeah, it was just back and forth.
So this was with the Dartmouth partners, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know they're still conducting interviews
Mm-hmm.
because I think I had a client that just met with them today, I want to say. So
Yeah, I asked him. He said that they said they're going to meet on Monday and they'll decide.
oh, was it Christian?
Yeah.
Okay. He's interviewing for New York, right?
Oh, is he?
I don't know. I mean,
Oh, I thought he was New York.
yeah, I don't know if they have different processes for different locations or not, but obviously you're
It says
interviewing.
New York.
Huh?
It says New York.
Oh, okay. All right. So they're meeting on Monday. Okay, so that's a whiles away. Um, Surprised they're taking,
Yeah.
but okay. Okay. Um, so yeah, I mean, look, if it's on your behaviorals, I mean, so the one about your answers not being long enough, surprised to hear that. Are your answers really short?
So, okay, this is what happened, which is, I think I talked to you about this before, where it's like going through different, just people giving different inputs. So from the Citi program, I had like gone very into my answers, and then he told me like, please cut them to like 5 sentences, like just get to the point really quickly. And my Barclays interview was soon after that, which is kind of what I did. Um, but I think soon after that is when we did the mock interview for Morgan Stanley. And then you asked me about like, tell me about like a hard experience. And you told me to go through like the surgery process and everything and like the whole coming back to it. So that's what I did for the Morgan Stanley. I went a lot more longer and into the description of what it was, which seemed like the more appropriate way to do so, which I think just went with like getting to know you more as a person, not just running through the whole response.
Was there a specific question that the person told you to cut it to 5 sentences? Was there a specific question, or was he saying in general?
Yeah, he was saying in general. This is like an analyst, so like they gave us analysts for our Citi mentorship. So that's where, you know,
That's so frustrating. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of analysts just they're not that much more experienced than you are, to be honest.
yeah.
At this point, like they've gone through the recruiting process one time probably, and then they got one offer at whatever bank that they are now at, and um, there are very few questions that I would answer with just 5 sentences. Or like if you answer all of your questions with just 5 sentences, like I can understand why that you would get the feedback of like, oh yeah, you're not saying enough, right?
Mhm.
Like it's very hard to tell like a impactful story with 5 sentences. Like even if you think about like Spark outline or whatever, like there's 5 parts to that. You literally
Mhm.
can't do one sentence for each thing, like it just doesn't work, right? So
Yeah. Mhm.
I think I don't know, the stuff that we've been working on for the behaviorals, the frameworks, like um there's just so many examples of it working. I just wouldn't mess with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know you're gonna get conflicting feedback from different people you talk to, and that's just the nature of the beast. But especially with behavioral interviews, it is more subjective than technicals, right?
Mhm.
So like everyone's gonna have different opinions, and the you just have to like kind of like pick the one that you agree with the most and just like stick to it. Like
Yeah.
don't don't like do this thing where you keep like doing something different for every single interview, because then like it's just not gonna work well, you know.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Um, but now you feel like you've gotten back on track in terms of like you have stuff that you're using that you feel like is working well though, it seems like, because the
Mhm.
last couple of interviews you feel like are going better, right? Of course, we're
Mhm.
still waiting for to see if we can get some feedback on the MS one, but regardless, like, yeah, okay. So if you're feeling good about it, then like, I wouldn't change too much. Like, we can continue to refine and improve things around the edges, but at this point, it kind of is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So what now? Like, what's on your mind? Like, are there other processes that you're in the process of applying to or hearing back from, or what's the most urgent thing right now, or what are the priorities for you?
So I'm still waiting for Citi. I found out they're still scheduling. It's been a while, but um, in their California offices, they also haven't scheduled them. And I reached out to the interviewer who told me they haven't scheduled them yet. So still don't know how that's working. Um,
Okay.
So those are the three main things. RBC is the only one I have confirmed. So I have like scheduled a few calls this week to like get a YRBC response. And I think, yeah, I don't know. I feel like overall, like calls and everything are going a lot better, like being able to talk to people a lot better. I seem to be doing well at the end of those. I think,
Calls as in like networking calls?
yeah,
Okay.
those have been a bit better. That's really it for that part. What I had asked you yesterday was I just wasn't sure because I've done the diversity and I've gone through a lot of the first rounds, how then like the rest of the processes go. Like, are most normal applications opening now? Is that how it works? Like the first rounds and everything? Because I think like Jeffries, for example, finished. I got an email from them. I had been waitlisted like a month or so ago. And then I got an email that said we filled out our positions.
Finish for diversity or for in general?
It just said like we finished recruiting, but maybe it was for diversity.
I feel like that's got to be for diversity because
Okay.
I don't think I haven't heard of many people, if anyone, that has like interviewed with them yet. So
Okay.
I highly doubt they're like completely done.
Okay.
You know,
Okay. So it's mostly diversity that's finished right now.
for the most part, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think there are some offers that some firms that have started giving out offers, maybe even for
Mhm.
non-diversity stuff, but I wouldn't say it's the majority. You know, but I mean, you submitted your applications for all of the banks already anyway, right? At least the ones that are open that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I wasn't sure because I was like, are they coming to a close? No, that's just diversity. Like they're starting to open, right? That's what my confusion was.
I guess the question is, if you already went through the diversity process and you didn't get it, do you need to do anything else for the regular process? Is that right?
So like some banks I apply diversity and some banks I apply normally. So for the diversity ones, they're just finishing. But from the normal ones, I basically haven't heard back. The only one was RBC. So I was wondering that's because those normal apps are just opening.
What are the ones that you apply normal? I mean, I can tell if I heard from other people, but
RBC, well, I applied to Lazard a while ago, but I think that's pretty much finishing up. PJTs, I think, is doing them over this month. I got an email that they would like go through them by April 20th. Evercore I applied. Well, Goldman, of course, I applied, but I saw they received like 230,000 apps like this morning.
sorry, you received what?
230,000 apps.
Goldman Sachs?
Yeah.
They said that?
Yeah, I just read in a news report this morning. I'll find it.
That's not all investment banking though.
Yeah.
That's like across the entire firm.
Okay.
I think like if we look at like 2 years ago, I want to say, they had maybe 25 or 27,000 applicants for their investment banking division.
Okay.
Those were 2 or 3 years ago. It might have been like 29 or something. It was in their investor presentation. So that's like from the source. It's still a lot of people, and you know, it's still going to be hard, but yeah, it's not only about a tenth of those are IB, I would say. So
Okay.
okay.
That JP, I applied again. Still working on that, and I applied to a few more. Credit Suisse I applied to. Deutsche I applied to.
Okay.
Bank of America, I just got a higher view. So I guess they're all starting their processes. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, so what? So now I guess, I mean, interview wise, you've been prepping and I feel like you're pretty much prepped,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
we're just kind of soliciting feedback on the behavioral side of things. On the so is the most of your time then just Like for all the outstanding apps you're still waiting to hear back from, just continuing to network with those firms, or like what?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of what I've been doing, getting just even more and more. So like talking normally, that has just been a really big struggle for me. I think just in general networking calls. So it's just been being able to make it more conversational and natural, and then just feeling more natural in the interview. Like I said, I felt like RBC was kind of a lot calmer, and I didn't feel so much pressure. I was just kind of trying to make it more interactive. So I think that helped. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. And then I just go through the technicals that people post on Slack as well, and doing more um, IB line and things like that, and just waiting to hear what I get.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything you need help with?
There's one question that I still don't understand that I think is basic for the LBO, which you asked yesterday. That was if you start with 100 million in an LBO and you exit at 100 million, can it still be profitable?
Yeah.
Something like that. So, which I think we went over, but I was still, so if you, either way, if you pay down all the debt, like if you pay down a lot of the debt throughout that time, I just didn't understand how that could still be the same.
So think about it this way, right? When you buy a house, you're going to put a down payment and you're going to borrow the rest from the bank through a mortgage, right? So say I buy $1 million house, the bank's going to say, okay, you have to pay 20% down payment out of pocket. And then so I'm going to like put $200,000 down, and then the other $800,000, I'm going to just like, I'm just going to take a mortgage, right? And then so technically when I buy the house, it's my house, but I really only own 20% of the house, and the bank owns the other 80%, right? Like if I don't make payments, then like the bank can take my house away, right? So then now let's say I rent this house out. So like let's say and I rent it out for I don't know, $4,000 a month, okay, on $1 million house. And the $4,000 is just enough to cover my mortgage payments. So essentially my tenant is giving me $4,000 every month, and then I'm turning around and I'm paying off my mortgage. I'm paying down my mortgage. The $800,000 balance, I'm paying it down every month, going to principal and interest, principal, interest, principal, interest. Let's say like 5 years from now, I decide I don't want to be a landlord anymore. I'm going to sell this house. And let's say like the market went up, then it came down and whatever during those 5 years, but like 5 years later, the house is still worth $1 million. Okay. So now I sell it for $1 million. But during the last 5 years, I've made 60 monthly payments, $4,000, right? Which is what, $240,000? Yeah. So I made $240,000 of payments to the bank. A lot of that was going towards interest. So let's just make up a number. Let's say 80% of that was going towards interest. So only 20% of that is going towards paying off the principal, right? 20% would be what, $48,000. So that means that my principal started at $800,000, but my tenant helped me pay down $48,000 of the balance. So now my mortgage balance is only 752. Still with me so far?
Yeah.
So now when I sell the house, even though I'm still only selling it for $1 million, I take the sales proceeds, I have to pay back the bank. Like the bank needs to be paid back, the 752 I still owe to them. So I take $1 million, I take 752, I give it to the bank, and that leaves me with 248, right? How much did I put in initially?
A lot less. I can't remember the exact number you said, but a lot less.
200, right?
200.
I paid 200 and I borrowed 800. So I put in 200 and I got out 248 5 years later. So that means I made $48,000 over those 5 years, which actually like I don't think that's a very good return, but it's the same concept, right? So if I
Yeah.
buy a business for 100, but I only pay 20, and the other $80 I'm like using debt, and then 5 years later I sell it for 100, but during those 5 years the business has been generating free cash flow, which is the equivalent of rent that I'm collecting from my tenant. I'm
Yeah.
taking the free cash flow and paying down the debt. I'm not paying that out of my own pockets, right?
Right.
So
I think
yeah,
mhm. I think what confuses me is how, like, because the price, why would you sell it at the same? Doesn't it normally go up?
you wouldn't normally sell it the same. It would normally go up, but this is
Yeah.
just a theoretical question
Okay.
to test you on your understanding of what are the different drivers of
Got it.
LBO returns, right?
Okay.
One of the drivers is debt paydown, meaning
Hmm.
even if the entire value of the business that you bought does not change, you will still generate returns just from paying down the debt. So, like, worst case scenario, the business doesn't grow at all, it doesn't become more valuable, you don't do any of that, and you just hold it for 5 years and then you sell it for the exact same price, like you still come out ahead,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. That makes sense.
So
Yeah.
that's what those questions are asking is like,
Okay.
because I could also just ask you like, hey, what are the drivers of LBO? And like you'd be able to answer that, right?
Hmm.
You're like
Yeah.
how much you pay, like how much debt you use, and then like, what operating assumptions you're making, which really is just the same as saying like how much debt can you pay down,
Yeah.
right? This is just like a disguised way of asking that question,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Um, okay. I've been getting a lot of brain teasers as well. Those are just about you walking through them, right?
Yeah.
They're
Uh,
definitely not about accuracy. Okay.
yeah.
Um,
I mean,
yeah.
like, what brain teasers have you been getting? Like, what's a brain
I
teaser?
got, well, so the last one was how many airplanes are in the sky right now?
Are in the sky right now?
Yeah, like at this moment in time.
Hmm. How did you approach it?
So I said I can't remember how many countries there are, but I said I did not approach it well, but I said something like right now there's like I'm gonna round completely, and I know this is wrong, but I'm gonna round that there's about 200 countries. And then some of them have really large airports and some of them have really small airports. So like to net out, I'm gonna say that each country has about I can't how many airplanes I said like 10 airplanes or something leaving at the moment to net out. And then I said 10 times the 200. So about, I think something like that. I had a bigger number though, like 2000, which was, I think I used a bigger number, but he corrected me. He's like, okay, no, it was actually 8,000 or something like that, or much more. I can't remember. Um, but yeah, that was just kind of my
He gave
feedback.
you the actual number?
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Um, yeah, I mean that's a tough one. I feel like I think I mean I wouldn't have known what the right answer is, but again, that's not the point. But I think that like um I think they probably want like a bit more like they probably want like a few more steps in your
Mhm.
calculation because I feel like what you just described, you had like two assumptions maybe,
Mhm.
which is like I think it comes across like a bit overly simplified, right?
Okay.
And it doesn't give you enough. It doesn't give you enough like runway to like, no pun intended, but it doesn't give you enough runway to like demonstrate like your thought process and logic, right?
Okay.
So I don't know how I would approach this to be honest, but maybe like um I don't know, like maybe I'll say like um let's just like start with the United States, right? Um the United States has, I don't know, 300 million people. And that's about, I don't know how many people we have in the world actually. And so it's like how many billions? Let me see, world population. I mean, there are like certain stats that are just like good to know in the background. It was 7.9 billion, 7.9 billion people in the world, right? But also like a lot of that is in places that are like, third world countries, not as developed, where people probably don't fly as much, right? But if I say, I don't know, let's just like, I'm just gonna make this up. There's 7.9 billion people in the world. So I'm gonna start with the United States. The United States is 300 million people. The entire world has 7.9 billion population, but a large portion of that is in like places that aren't very developed, and people probably aren't flying a lot, right? Like people, there's no reason for them to fly and travel and stuff. If we only looked at like the developed world, I think it's about like 1.2 billion people. So you can say like, okay, so the US makes up about 25% of the developed world, where so that's probably places like US, Europe, and like other major cities in the world, right? Within the US, there are 50 states, and some states are bigger, some states are smaller. I'm from California, so I'm just gonna like, California is obviously one of the biggest states, but California, as far as I know, we have three major airports, plus a bunch of smaller ones. But we have like, let's just look at the big ones. So we got San Francisco, we got LA, and we have Oakland. Oh, and we have San Jose. So we got four big airports. Well, okay, whatever. That's fine. I was thinking, do I count San Diego? Whatever. Let's say, okay, so there's four big airports in California, but that's probably like on the high side, right? Like in New York, you have Newark, JFK, and you have what's the other one? Long Island or something. There's probably like three or four, right? So big states have three or four major airports. There are probably some small states that just have one big airport or one main airport, probably in the state capital. So on average, let's say it averages out to 2 airports per state. We have 50 states, so that's 100 airports. And then let's say on average at each airport, I'm not like an expert on like flight control or whatever, but I know that they have air control towers where people have to basically tell each flight like, okay, now it's your turn to take off. Like they can't have all the planes taking off at the same time, right? So we can probably make some assumption around how, each hour at most, like I think in my experience, when I take a flight and we take off, like we're on the tarmac and we take off, from the time we lift off to the time we're in the air, I would estimate it's probably about 3 minutes. So in an hour, I think at most you'd be able to squeeze out 20 flights per airport because there are 60 minutes, right? And we have 100 airports. So that's whatever, 20 times 100, which is 2,000. So every hour, say there's 2,000 flights in the air just in the United States. But United States is 25% of the world population. So if we extrapolate that, then 2,000 becomes 8,000 if it's like the developed world. And then like, also, it's not that people in the non-developed world don't fly at all, right? And also, like I said, there's a lot of other smaller airports that we aren't taking into account. So maybe I round that up from 8,000, let's say like, I don't know, to 10,000 flights per hour. And you said right at this moment, how many flights are in the air? Well, divided by 60 minutes. So 10,000 divided by 60, whatever that is. So like, I'm probably way off. Yeah. But like, I didn't get to 8,000, but like, at least I showed there's probably like 8 to 10 steps in there that got me to the number. And then I explained the rationale of like, as much as I can, I explained the rationale of like why I'm choosing that assumption, right? Like, oh, based on my own experience, when I take off is 3 minutes, or, oh, I know there's a air control tower. Like you just have to like find stuff to grab onto that you can use to justify. It doesn't even matter if it's right. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think like that answer would be a lot more satisfying for the interviewer.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hope that didn't ding me, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, brain teasers is tough. To be honest, I hate them. Like, I don't really feel like they tell you that much, but I don't
Yeah,
know. Who asked you that one? Or who's been asking you brain teasers?
that was Perella. That was Perella. But I had brain teaser with Deutsche Bank. I had one with RBC as well.
Got it. Okay. Well, hopefully, yeah, I mean, we'll see, I guess. But um
Oh, and Citi.
in City. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that was that. And then I think, yeah. I mean, thinking back to the Morgan Stanley interview, I'm thinking back to there's a behavioral question that I got where tell me about a time you went like overstepped authority. I think that's how it was worded. Went over authority. And I talked about like having a surgery and like having to wait an amount of time and going into it a bit before because tryouts were coming from what the doctor instructed. And then that might have caused me to have injured it earlier than I could have. So I kind of went against like the full time that the doctor recommended. I don't know if that's bad.
The question was, tell me about a time when you did what?
Like overstepped authority, went like against authority.
Tell me about a time you went against authority. And your example was not listening to the doctor with your rehab and trying to play soccer earlier than you should have, which caused you to re-injure it.
Yeah.
I think that's a fine answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I remember for that one, she nodded her head. She was like, so I didn't know. But she had just had a child, so I don't know if she was just thinking of me in that way. But I thought maybe that wasn't a good example, or maybe too extreme.
Sorry, she was shaking her head.
Yeah, when I did that, she looked at me and then she shook her head. Like, that's not good. I don't know.
Huh. I guess I assume her shaking her head means I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
Um, because typically I think if the interviewer doesn't like your behavior and answer, they won't, in my experience, they won't like go out of their way to express it so that you know they don't like it. This goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is like if an interviewer doesn't like your behavior and answer, usually you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You walk out of the interview, you feel like, oh yeah, that interview was great, and then like you don't get
Mm-hmm.
when you don't get the offer, you're like, I don't know why I didn't get the offer, right?
Yeah.
So that would be my default assumption is like, there's no reason for her to just like visibly show you that she didn't like your answer. So I assume that's not what she was doing, but who knows?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and this is something I wanted to ask you about the answer of other banks, like other banks you're talking to or your timeline. How to approach that question.
What other banks are you talking to?
Yeah.
I mean, I think for that one, you have to take into account who's asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
I think like all the banks obviously know that there are many banks right now that are all doing their interview processes. So like you should have some banks that you're talking to. You don't want to seem like, oh, no one else is talking to me. Because that would just be weird, or that would make you seem like not that desirable, right? And then, but you also want to strike a balance, because what the other reason why they're asking that question is because they're trying to gauge how likely it is that you would take an offer from them if they were to give you one, right? So like, I don't know, if you're talking to like a middle market bank and then they're like, who else are you talking to? And then you rattle off like 5 bulge bracket and elite boutique banks. And they're probably going to be like, all right, well, she's great, but chances of her taking our offer is probably pretty low, right?
Yeah.
Versus like, if you're talking to like a bulge bracket or elite boutique, like you're talking to a Goldman or you're talking to whoever, like, then you can probably be more liberal about who you tell them. But I think like the key is just you want to tell them, a few banks that are like kind of on their level, ideally, and maybe like just like slightly below them, if that makes sense. Like in the same league, so like they still view them as competition, but not like people where they're going to be like, oh, well, if she's talking to them, she's probably going to take them over us. So there's no point. Like you don't want them to think that, right? Does that make sense? The other thing to keep in mind too is like if they already asked you why our bank, and you said certain things about their bank, then the other banks that you're talking to, like ideally would like jive with that story. Does that make sense? So like, for example, if you say, yeah, like if you're interviewing with an elite boutique, you're interviewing with Perella, and you say like, yeah, like I'm like really only interested in doing like M&A advisory, which is like, like I'm not interested in doing like capital raises. And like all the other banks you list are like Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Deutsche Bank. Like then it's like, wait, that doesn't make sense, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And is that also something where like at the end you should curve back to saying like, but Perella is my top choice, or like, but so and so is my top choice?
I would.
Yeah.
I would. Like that's how we have it in the questionnaire, right?
Okay. Yeah, I just always found that really uncomfortable. Well, I got asked that for Perella, but not specifically that. You just said, what other interviews do you have, or so, or do you have anything coming up? And I said I had a couple interviews the coming week, and he said, oh, I just wanted to ask to know how we're going to structure anything else, but it was just awkward.
How we're going to structure anything else?
Like the coming rounds or super days or anything like that. That's what he said.
So he wasn't even asking you like specifically who you're interviewing with. He just wants to know if you had interviews.
If I had interviews, yeah. But I just remembered this awkward question. But yeah, that was his specific question. He was like, do you have any interviews coming? Are you interviewing with other banks? And I just gave a general like, yeah, I have a couple interviews coming next week.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. Like he didn't ask you for specific banks. So you don't have to give him the specifics unless he's asking you, right? But if he's like, do you have any interviews coming up? So yeah, actually I do have a few this coming week. But Perella is actually my top choice. So that would be a good segue for you to ask him, like, what does your timeline look like?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a few interviews coming up actually, but actually you guys are my first choice. So like, do you know what your recruiting timeline looks like? Like what, I know like this is just the first round, but like if this goes well, like when would the super day be? And then see what he says.
Yeah.
And if it's like the super day is like very late or whatever, it's like, okay, got it. So like I said, you guys are my first choice. So like if I do end up getting another offer before your super day, like what should I do? Should I just let you guys know? Like, would there be a way to accelerate the process? I might even ask that. Because now, if you do need to accelerate later, you can come back to this guy because you already talked about it with him. And also, by asking him those questions, you are like actually implying or like demonstrating that they are in fact your first choice. Because like that's the only reason why you ask, right? So even if they're not your first choice, you're kind of acting a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I think those are the main things. Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna keep waiting to see what comes and keep prepping.
Yeah, let me know if you hear back on the feedback on that mess. If we need to like tweak some of your technicals, then obviously let's do that. But it depends on what the feedback is. Like, like the feedback you got from the analyst, like I don't agree with that at all, right? But like, but let's see what that is. Otherwise, in the meantime, you just gotta, I mean, you have the RBC Super Day coming up, so definitely prep for that, right? But you just gotta keep your heads down and keep interview prepping and keep networking with the banks that you're still waiting to hear back from. Have you been networking with like mostly more senior folks or like junior people?
Yeah, I started networking much more with senior folks the past couple of months
Yeah.
when I went up. But I had one really bad conversation, so I kind of took a step back for a little bit from that. But yeah, I started going up again a little bit more.
What was a bad conversation or why was it bad?
I was I don't know. I was way too nervous. I was way too nervous and I was rushing extremely fast and I could tell he was trying to make it comfortable for me, but I was really rushing into it. He was like, "Hey, wait, slow down a little bit. Tell me a little bit about you." He was trying to slow it down and he was like trying to be casual and he's like, "Oh, I went to Colombia a couple weeks ago." And I tried to be nice about that, but then I yeah, I don't know. I just asked kind of everything all in one. And he said at the end of the conversation, he said, well, definitely like a little bit before the end of the conversation, he said, I'll definitely tell them to look at your resume. Don't worry. And then at the end, I kept saying like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. And then I shot him an email when the application was open and he never answered.
Doesn't mean
So I
anything.
wasn't sure if that's something that I should follow up on.
Um, was there an ask in your email?
Yeah. I told him, like, so he told me, let me know, like, keep me up to date with the recruiting process and let me know. And I told him when the app's open, I said, hi, thank you again for the call. I just wanted to like the final ask email that you have on the
Yeah.
thing, but he never answered.
How long ago was that?
Like 3 weeks ago,
2 weeks ago?
three, I'd say.
And have you applied since?
Yeah, I applied.
Okay. So remember we went through this once before? You saw like one of your interviews, your calls went horribly or whatever. I think it was with like the LatAm group. And then like it turned out like the guy didn't really mind at all, but like you had interpreted it as like he was mad at you because he didn't respond to one of your emails afterwards or something. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
it was just I was an associate and this was an MD, so
matter
I
like
just didn't know if like when it comes to the final ask. So for him, he had like it was for a reference, but since this was a final ask, I don't know if that's something you can do again to follow up again.
um well you already submitted.
Yeah,
Right? So what you could do is um you could ping him again and just say, hey, so and so, I'm guessing you might have missed my last email, but uh, I've since I've since applied, I've since submitted the application, uh, and just wanted to keep you updated on my progress. And thank you again for speaking with me back during XYZ whenever you guys spoke.
yeah,
It was really helpful, and it's just like thank him, update him, thank him, and then just like, if there's anything else that you think I should be doing, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you for all your help. Like, and just like, if he responds, he responds. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Like, there is a good chance that he just didn't respond because he's a busy guy.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
a,
He
there's
was
a very
taking
good,
like 2 months to answer my first email. Um,
it took 2 months to answer your first email. Okay, there you go. Right. So like, sometimes you just need to like nudge him a little bit. Who knows? Maybe this time he sees your email, he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make sure that HR looks at this.
yeah.
Like,
Okay. Do you know by any chance how how when you submit apps you put first choice and second choice? Um, so does that go to like both of the offices basically, or do they mostly just kind of go over the first, and if not, then they move you to the second, or does like your app go to both offices?
I mean, when you submit an application, they make you fill out your rankings.
Yep.
Um, I'm pretty sure if you apply to multiple locations, then they'll all get your apps. But in my experience, I think someone asked this before. Like someone asked in the Slack channel, like, hey, has anyone ever like gotten interviews from a place that they didn't rank as their first choice?
Mhm.
I think one person said they did, but I think there was like only one person that experienced that. It's just like, so my takeaway from that was like, it's not impossible to get interviews from the office that you rank as your second choice, but like for the vast majority of people, usually you're not going to, because there's enough applicants that are applying to all these offices that like they easily just, pick people who rank them first, and that's enough to fill the slate of people that they want to interview, right? So like no one wants to no one wants to be like the backup, you know?
Yep. Okay. Okay. Yep. I think that was probably the general thing, Sam. But
Okay.
thank you. I'll let you know.
So the ranking thing, like I would be strategic about it too, right? I mean, obviously, like you probably have a preference for where you want to be. Like I'm assuming you go to NYU, so you want to be in New York, but like if you end up having like a really strong connection or someone that's like pulling for you in a certain office, then you might consider for that firm, maybe you rank that office first.
Mhm.
That's just like to hedge a little bit
Mhm.
and diversify, right? Like the most of your applications, you can still rank whatever your top choice city is, but on one-off instances, you might rank something else just in case, right? Just because at the end of the day, you just want to have at least one offer.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Sam.
Alrighty. Cool. Let me know if you have any other questions. Otherwise, I mean, we'll meet again before your RBC Super Day, so I'm sure we'll talk.
Okay. Sounds
Cool.
good. Thank you, Sam.
Alrighty. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe to our channel or podcast so that you can get notified of all of our future episodes as well. If you'd like to apply to work with us so that we can help you in a similar way, feel free to reach out to our team at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. Talk soon.